Welcome to the Growth Through Adversity podcast, where men are forged, not coddled. Here we dive deep into the path of true transformation in pursuit of physical, mental, spiritual, and temporal growth. We talk training, nutrition, business, mindset, and spirituality. We embrace strength and we loathe ease. We reject weakness in every form and cultivate power, the will to power itself. This is the rebirth of modern man. Raw masculinity, tempered by reason, virtue, and right action, because nothing of value is earned without sacrifice. Let's begin our apotheosis together. Welcome to another episode of the Growth Through Adversity podcast with your host, Ragnar the Warwolf. What is up, people? Hope everybody is having a fantastic day. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the difference between compound movements and isolation movements. I get these questions all the time. What do they do? I want to do more of this one. I want to do more of that one. I like this exercise. I don't like that exercise. I get it. I have my own personal favorite exercises. There's some exercises like the Bulgarian split squat that if I never did it again in my fucking life, it would be too soon. But at the end of the day, every different exercise and every different modality has a place in your program when it's put there intelligently. And we're going to get into a little bit more about what that means. But when we build programs, we don't just build programs arbitrarily, right? So we're not just trying to say, hey, he's going to be at the gym for 30 minutes. Let's just like fill that time up with 30 minutes worth of exercise or an hour or whatever it is. We're looking at your goals, what you're trying to do. We're looking at your injuries, limitations, the things that we need to work on, rehab, create more stability. Now that one's a big one because honestly, like the kinetic chain, your body is it's all connected and everything works together in what's called synergy in the body, right? And so a lot of times like you'll be like, man, I have fucking elbow pain and my elbow hurts. And like immediately in my mind, the first thing is there's nothing wrong with your elbow. They could do an MRI of your elbow tomorrow and there's absolutely nothing wrong with your elbow. The pain is probably originating at the wrist with bad wrist structure. We start to bend the wrist back too much. Everything gets overstretched. Things get pulled on. Things get inflamed, right? So, a lot of times when you guys tell me something that's hurting, it's like I'm building something into your program and you're not even aware of the fact that it's addressing some other thing that, had come up in your past. Unilateral movements are a great example. Bulgarian split squats, if we're having pain anywhere along the spine, anywhere through the hips, the knees, a lot of times those are going to be the fix, is creating a little bit more balance in the kinetic chain and a little bit more stability throughout the hips and the lower back. So that's one example of the things that we're going to look at. And then it's like results, like what are you trying to do? You know what I mean? Are you training for strength? Are you training for just overall wellness, health? Are you training for physique? Are you training for performance? So all of these look different and all of these, we're going to put things together different. So we're going to kind of get into that and really carve apart like what these exercises do, why we pick them. And if I can get this thing to move out of my way, there we go. And the different uses that they have. So number one, the foundation. So compound movements are absolutely 100% have to make up the foundation of any good, well-structured training program. So a compound movement by definition is a movement that engages multiple joints, that moves multiple joints at once. And again, we get back to that word of synergy, of things working together. So think things like bench press, squat, deadlift, overhead press, anything where like, bench press is moving the elbows, the shoulders all at once, right? Squat is moving the hips, the knees all at once, right? And then there's a ton of stabilization and things that has to happen in a process like that where we're moving the whole body at once. Why this is foundational is because moving your body in unison is functional, right? Like, so being able to move heavy things under load is like the essence of being functionally strong, right? So if you go out in your yard and you need to pick up a 50-pound sack of concrete, you're not going to go down there and like sit down on the ground and do a bicep curl. Like, I mean, you're going to do a compound movement. You're going to hinge at the hips. You're going to bend at the knees. You're going to have your shoulders involved with it, your elbows involved with it. Your whole body is going to work in unison to safely pick that thing up. Same if you're dragging somebody to safety, same if you're stacking wood, same if you're hunting, like any of the things that you're going to do on working, any of the things you're going to do on a day-to-day basis that involve you moving something of even moderate heaviness is going to be a compound movement, or you're going to get hurt doing it. One of the two. There's only two options there. So that's why I always say, like, compound movements are the essence of functionality. So there's been a huge, movement in like the functional training space. And I actually hate the word functional training because these assholes have ruined it. And when we think functional training, we think of like yoga chicks on Bosu balls with like 3-pound kettlebells doing a bunch of weird shit, trying to build their balance or whatever. That's not functional. That doesn't mimic a real world type situation. What is functional is being able to hinge over at your hips and pick up 200 pounds of dead weight or 100 pounds of dead weight, because you might need to do that in a real life situation. You might need to do that with somebody that you love, somebody that you care about. For example, I was at my grandparents' house one year and my grandma fell, and she was overweight and she was unhealthy and she had a bad hip and she fell and she didn't get hurt in the fall, but it was like, my ability to squat down and to basically lift her under the arms, her 200 and something pound mass under the arms, and get her up into a chair was the difference between us having to like literally call an EMT or something to do that, because she could not physically get herself up. So that's like what I'm saying, is that these are real world applications, and that's just one example. So they are the essence of functional training, right? They also are the best way to build muscle and to build strength. There is nothing that builds more muscle and more strength in the world than compound movements. I will go out on my shield on that argument and die on it. 100%. It's a bunch of joints moving in unison, and they're able to move heavier loads than any isolation movement. And heavy loads under adequate volume is what ultimately creates muscular tension, which is what ultimately builds muscle. And I saw the thumbs up there, Jimmy. I'm glad you agree. It's 100% like, you're a great example of it. We've done compound movements with you, even though you've had dual knee surgeries, knee replacements, and it's what's honestly created more stability and more strength in your kinetic chain than any silly nonsense would have. So that's number one. Now, number two is like what I call the details, right? These are going to be your isolation movements. So we're talking about one joint, or, sometimes it's a couple of muscles. There's a lot of muscles on the body, but it's really one joint, one muscle, and total focus. This is something like a bicep curl. This is something like a knee extension or a knee curl. So we're not moving the hip. We're only moving the knee. We're not moving the shoulder. We're only moving the elbow. And without a doubt, these have a place in programming, right? And so what they do is they really isolate a muscle. So they separate the small muscles out from the big muscles. This is where compound movements fail, is that like your quads are incredibly strong, right? And your chest is incredibly strong. Your biceps, your triceps, less so. So the chest kind of takes more of the load when we're doing compound movements in those contexts. So we do want to fill the gaps with some of these isolation moves, especially on the smaller muscles on our body that aren't going to get as well targeted, that are going to kind of get bullied out of the movements or act as more of a stabilizing role in the movements on the big compound lifts. And they also have a great place for like mind muscle connection, for focusing on the pump, for focusing on some of the secondary mechanisms of muscle growth, aside from just like moving really heavy loads at really high volumes. There is something to be said about, getting a great pump. There is something just to be said about mind muscle connection. Bodybuilders talk about this all the time. Bodybuilders have unarguably, the best physiques, strictly physiques. We're not talking performance, or anything like that nature, but just looking at their bodies, that is what that whole sport is designed to do. They talk about the mind muscle connection all the time. So there's definitely something to it. So how we kind of blend all of this together. Also, isolation movements are great for rehab moves, right? So where if something's hurt, then you can do an isolation move, but you might not be able to do a compound move. So a lot of times when my athletes are injured, then it's like, okay, so we're going to switch from more of a compound base into more of the isolation moves that they can do, or the parts of the body that they can do. So there's a ton of ways that this can all be used. And also, like, these work as great accessories. So we fatigue things with the big, heavy compound lifts. That's why we do them first earlier in the program when we're fresh. And then once those muscles are already fatigued, it's great for these little accessory movements to come through and just polish off the smaller muscles that maybe didn't get totally murdered with the big ones. So everything kind of works in unison. So in programming and on how we combine them, this is like really important. So compounds, like I always tell people, basically two models, one athlete, two models, one person, however you want to look at that, is compound movements. I want you to train like a strength athlete. I want you to train like a power lifter. I want you to focus on having great mechanics, great motor patterns, you know what I mean? Being highly efficient in your lifts, lifting properly so you don't get injured. But I want you to focus on moving the weight from point A to point B as efficiently and with as much force as possible, right? So again, force, position, load. These are the things that we're thinking about as when we're training like a strength athlete. So that's how you're going to do your big compound lifts. That's what matters. That's what's going to make you stronger. That's what's going to add most of the muscle tissue on your body. Marcon, what's up, man? Number two, isolation movements. I want you to train like a bodybuilder. So I want you to think tension, pump, detail. I want you to drop the load on a single arm bicep curl. It's not a 3 rep or a 1 rep max. If you're tracking your 1 rep max on a single arm bicep curl, like you are either just confused and deluded beyond belief or you just don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like it's totally irrelevant, right? That stuff matters on your big compound lifts. On the little stuff, it's like drop the weight. I want you to focus on connecting with that muscle, feeling the bicep burn, feeling the tension in the bicep, feeling the muscle fill up with blood, feeling the tension, feeling the little tweaks as you pronate your wrist or you supinate your wrist at the top, twist your wrist, how you can feel the bicep engage even harder. I want you to focus on all the stuff that you don't focus on in your big strength movements, in your little isolation movements. So we're basically attacking growth, hypertrophy through two different methods. Again, through raw muscular tension and load, and then also through isolation, pump, and kind of focus and just really being honed in on the detail and understanding how that muscle works and how to target it with the different movements. So that is kind of how we split that. And it's basically, again, same session. You're kind of switching to different pathways of your brain here. I do it all the time on my little isolation movements. I'm really focused on dropping the way. I don't care what's on the bar. There's no ego in it. It's irrelevant. What I really care about is feeling it in the right place, lighting my muscles up, getting a good pump, reducing the rest a little bit, and really just focusing on, again, the focus side of things. So how we stack it. This is also very, very important. Like there was this pre-exhaust thing that was big for a while. I'm not a fan of it. It's pretty much been disproven in the literature. It just doesn't make sense. So the idea was that like you would do an isolation movement, pre-exhaust yourself. This is something from like the 70s, 80s, pre-exhaust yourself, and then you would go to your big compound lifts and just like finish off your muscles. But like understanding like the actual biology of how your muscles work and how hypertrophy works is that, again, tension plus volume basically equals hypertrophy. So really muscular tension is the main. Volume is another form of tension. But yes, raw muscular tension, how much tension those muscles are under in aggregate is what's going to be the signal that causes those muscles to grow. So obviously, the most tension is going to come from the heaviest loads at the highest volumes. Those are going to be our compound lifts. So we want to do those first in the exercise. Also, there's a safety element to that. When you're fresh, you're stabilizing muscles in your core, your lower back, your obliques. All of that is much better at bracing and protecting your spine and some of the more vulnerable parts of your body against these heavier loads. Whereas if you exhaust all that stuff, you pre-exhaust all that stuff, then, it might be a little bit weaker. It might be a little bit fatigued, and it might not be able to stabilize and support the spine. And you might end up getting hurt, which is not what we want. So compound movements always go first. After we finish all of our compound movements or all of our compound movements for a specific muscle group, that's fine too. Then we're going to move into our isolation movements. And then the result from that is so now we've got all the tension out of the way. Then we've gone into the pump and the detail. We're feeling really good. And that's going to be the result that you guys are looking for of building muscle, burning fat, and really just building like the physique that's both functional and, visually appealing. So that is basically the system, is that Well, that one doesn't belong in there. Sorry about that, guys. That I was like, I didn't think I made six. All right, that is basically the system, and that's why all a good workout program has both compound and isolation movements, and now exercise selection. This is also something that we think about regularly. We want to change our exercise selection regularly. A horizontal press, a flat bench press with a barbell, a flat bench press on a Smith rack, a flat bench press with dumbbell, an incline bench press. These all work in all of its variations. These all work the pec muscles and the front deltoids, the front of your shoulders, but they all work them in slightly different fashions. And so we want to mix those things up, but we also kind of want to identify what your goals are. So again, if you want to be a strength athlete and you want to have a really strong bench press, then we're going to kind of emphasize barbell type movements and we're going to fill in the gaps with dumbbells. If you're more focused on just function and kind of repairing your old beat up shoulders, and we're probably going to do more dumbbell work, fix in a little bit of barbell work. And we're going to think about those things as we put your programs together. So exercise selection does come. There's a whole nother nuance to that. We could do a whole separate training on how we actually pick exercises, how we cycle them, how we change them. But really, like the structure never changes. Compound, isolation, accessory. Well, so plyometrics. So if you're doing like an intensification phase, plyometrics, box jumps, sprints, things like that nature come first because those are the most demanding on the CNS and they're all compound movements. Then our compound strength movements, and then our isolation moves. And that is like 101 how you're going to put a program together that actually works. So that wraps that up. And I am open and free to any questions here anybody might have. Doesn't have to be about this, can be literally about anything. But yeah, you can just unmute yourself or drop them in the chat, whatever works. Captain Jimmy, I see unmuted. What's up, man?
Checking it out, enjoying it.
Awesome.
I had a question. I'm not fully. Vicky had something the other day about the leg extensions,
Okay.
and it was an orthopedic surgeon talking about damage to the patella, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure you wouldn't have us doing that if doing these. You know what I'm saying? I think it's like out of a million people out there using that, this guy gets a few people, hey, do you do this? And they say, oh yeah, I do that in the gym. And maybe they do 100 other things too that affects their joint or whatever. Who
So
knows?
she's not wrong. It has been a hotly debated thing in orthopedics in orthopedic circles and like PT circles. There was a study, it's relatively obsolete and outdated now. There was a study that came out that it puts unusual shear forces on the knee joint, can cause damage to the patellofemoral cartilage, the cartilage underneath your knee. What we found more and more recent research has found that when used properly, a lot of like the top knee PTs now that are do a lot of PT on knees actually use a knee extension in a limited range of motion. So either, in a limited range of motion, so either the lower end or the top end, not the whole range of motion, which can be really good for building up, kind of correcting imbalances in the muscles around, the vastus and the medial lateralis there, the muscles that kind of cause the teardrop and the outer side of your knee there, where the quads come down and attach to the knee. So it can be very useful for PT uses. More and more, they've trended more in that direction, the specialists in those departments anyways. Although I'm sure there's still like, it's like anything else. There's going to be like old guard people that are just like, no, it's horrible. It will destroy your knees. What I've seen in working with hundreds of people and talking to hundreds of people and lots of different PTs and stuff like that is that when performed properly, so the problem with them is if you hyperextend the knee, if you're aggressively kicking up and you're kind of ending that knee in a hyperextension,
Right.
I definitely think, but like, I mean, if you watch videos on leg press, people have broken their legs backwards by locking their knees out at the top. Like fucking cricketed their legs
Don't do that.
backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't lock your knees. Like stop your knees before they come to full extension on any leg exercise you're doing. Literally train yourself to where you either stop right before full extension and then slowly go into full extension, or just stop with the muscles under tension, which is going to hurt more and cause more tension on the muscles because you're not giving them that rest when the bones are resting on bones. So that's the number one rule. And then also like nothing irky and jerky, slow and controlled. You can be explosive on the extension, again, slowing it as you're getting towards the top, nice and controlled on the eccentric, on the downward phase. And if there's a part of it that hurts you specifically, then maybe it's a movement that you avoid. That's the thing, is that you'll have an isolated case where something injures one person, but you don't know enough of the details. Like, you weren't there to witness them. Like, what were they doing? What did their form look like? What did their mechanics look like?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Or maybe just like you get to x-raying their knee and they have a knee that's put together strange. They have some kind of, birth defect or, genetic defect, or just weird moment arms and levers in the knee to where that knee is under abnormal shear forces and stresses when it does an exercise. But the vast majority of people without an active knee injury, and even some of them with an active knee injury, I'm perfectly happy to program in those, because when used properly, they will definitely help strengthen up all the structures around the knee. That's kind of the beauty of them, is they hit the kind of the end of the muscles there, whereas squatting and your more hip hinging and your more knee flexion movements hit the top end of your quads and the middle part of your quads more. And those kind of the end of the quads there where they attach to the knee get neglected. So the knee extensions really work that part. That's why you feel it burned right down by your knee, because that's the part. It's focusing more on knee extension and less on the hip side of a squat.
Well, that's what I was going to say. They really do hurt me a lot.
Yeah, in
Right
a good way.
across my quads, right where I want them to hurt, man.
They hurt me like a motherfucker. They're one of my favorite lifts. Yep.
Yeah, I hate it so much, and I love it because I'm looking at the muscles. I can see that there's activity. I mean, you can see it and feel it big time. So I love them.
Yep. It's another exercise too that it's like, it's not an ego lift. It's not a big compound lift. It's like something that, find a weight that's, you can get your programmed reps for. But it's like, you shouldn't be breaking down form. Like, I would rather you do an extra 5 reps and really just light those things on fucking fire than try to like, hump your way through a heavier weight that's too much for you. Yeah. So it's one
I
of those,
watch people in the gym now all the time, and they're like banging the weights real hard. Their body is jerking and they're slamming there. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Ragnar will walk up and slap you.
Yeah, it's a
I'm kidding. I know you
good way to get hurt for sure. Like, it's
crazy. Yeah.
It's a fast track to a torn fucking tendon or ligament.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Cool. Any other questions? Does that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to hear your opinion on it, because I'm going to keep doing them. I love them.
Yeah, definitely. Just listen to your body. If you've been doing them for, over a year, and your knees feel better than they did before, that alone tells at least you that, in your isolated anecdotal evidence that you have, that they're very good for you.
I've got 2
seen that more and more with guys with pre-existing knees and all that stuff. When performed correctly and with the right loads, like, those are fucking fantastic for your knees.
Yeah. Love them. Love them.
Awesome. It's the same people that say that bench pressing is bad for your shoulder. Bench pressing is not bad for your shoulder. Bench pressing with bad form can hurt your shoulder or your chest or your elbow or your wrist, but building the muscles up in your shoulder ultimately is going to be good for them long term if you have good mechanics and you're not lifting more weight than you can safely handle.
Right.
Cool. All right. If nobody else has any questions, I'm going to let you guys go and enjoy your evening. Catch you guys later.
See you, buddy.
Yep. Later.
Take care, guys. Give me a call sometime, Tom.
You bet, man. We'll do it.
All right. See you guys.
Talk to y'all later.